All right, imagine a clinical detective case where the victim is the human body and the scene of the crime is the bloodstream. A scene that the kidneys filter an astonishing 40 gallons of every single day. And the only way to catch the culprit, you've got to decode the microscopic clues left behind by the kidneys. In this explainer, we're going to put on our detective hats and uncover the hidden diagnostic clues used to distinguish different types of acute kidney injuries. Plus, we'll trace the devastating, slow-motion metabolic fallout that happens in chronic kidney disease. Let's dive in. Here's what we're going to cover. First, the flaws of serum creatinine. Second, differentiating AKI and the clues to look for. Third, the secrets hidden in urine. And finally, CKD and the metabolic dominoes. Section 1. The flaws of serum creatinine. Now, every good detective needs a reliable witness, right? Well, in nephrology, our primary witness is notoriously unreliable. If you're looking at a basic metabolic panel and resting all your clinical confidence on a normal serum creatinine level, I've really got to ask, do you trust it? The truth is, relying purely on creatinine to gauge real-time kidney health is a massive pitfall. It's often a heavily delayed and honestly highly imperfect indicator of true glomerular filtration. So why exactly does it fall short? Well, first off, creatinine actually overestimates the glomerular filtration rate, or GFR. Why? Because a portion of it is actively secreted by the renal tubules, not just passively filtered. Second, it's a breakdown product of muscle. This means it's heavily skewed by a patient's muscle mass, their age, and their gender. Think about an elderly woman with very low muscle mass. She might have a totally normal creatinine on paper, while her true kidney function is actually severely impaired. But perhaps the biggest flaw of all is the delay. In an acute kidney injury, the actual cellular damage happens days before the creatinine spike is ever seen on a lab report. It can take up to 48 hours for creatinine to accumulate enough to reflect a sudden drop in filtration. By the time it finally rises, the damage is already done. Treating an acute injury based solely on creatinine, it's literally like driving down the highway while looking only in your rearview mirror. Moving to Section 2, differentiating AKI, the clues. Because creatinine is such a sluggish marker, we've got to look for superior clues to differentiate acute kidney injuries. We really need to distinguish between the two most common forms. First, there's pre-renal azotemia, where the kidney is simply starved of blood flow. And then there's intrinsic acute tubular necrosis, where the kidney tissue itself is physically damaged. In a pre-renal state, say due to severe dehydration or heart failure, the kidneys are underperfused, sure, but they're structurally intact. They are desperately trying to conserve water and sodium to boost up blood pressure. So what do we see clinically? We see a high BUN to creatinine ratio of over 20. The urine is highly concentrated with an osmolality over 500. And because they're holding onto sodium so tightly, urine sodium drops way down below 20. But in intrinsic AKI, specifically acute tubular necrosis or ATN, the tubular cells are dead or dying. They just can't concentrate urine or reabsorb sodium anymore. As a result, urine osmolality falls below 400 and urine sodium just leaks out at over 40 milliequivalents per liter. The tubules are essentially broken. And this brings us to the fractional excretion of sodium, or FENa. Think of FENa as the absolute ultimate functional test. It calculates the exact percentage of filtered sodium that actually makes it out into the urine. If FENa is less than 1%, it means the kidney's tubules are working overtime, avidly reabsorbing sodium to fight off hypovolemia. That points squarely to pre-renal azotemia. But if FENa is greater than 1%, or even higher in more severe cases, it tells us the tubules are structurally damaged and inappropriately leaking sodium, and that indicates intrinsic ATN. Section 3. The secrets in urine. Let's move deeper into our investigation. The physical characteristics of urine hold some incredible secrets. And this brings us to a really critical red flag: isocynuria, or a fixed specific gravity. Normally, urine-specific gravity fluctuates based on your hydration, right? It's high when you're dehydrated and low when you've been chugging water. But when specific gravity is fixed precisely at 1.010, well, that's the exact specific gravity of plasma protein ultrafiltrate. It means the kidneys have completely lost their concentrating and diluting abilities. They're totally unresponsive to the body's hydration status or antidiuretic hormone. This is a classic hallmark of severe intrinsic damage or advanced chronic kidney disease. Now, what about the microscopic evidence? When we spin down urine and look under a microscope, the casts we see are literally molds of the renal tubules. If we see normal sediment or maybe just transparent hyaline casts, it usually points back to those pre-renal states we talked about. But if we shift our focus and spot renal tubular epithelial cells or granular casts, specifically those notorious muddy brown casts, you found the smoking gun. Muddy brown casts are dead, sloughed off tubular cells. They are practically synonymous with acute tubular necrosis. And keep in mind, when an acute kidney injury strikes, it's not just about a drop in urine output. It triggers a dangerous systemic fallout. The kidneys suddenly stop filtering toxins and balancing electrolytes. Potassium builds up rapidly, causing life-threatening hyperkalemia. Phosphate spikes while calcium plummets. And crucially, the kidneys fail to excrete daily unmeasured organic acids like sulfates and phosphates. Because these unmeasured acids pile up in the blood while your bicarbonate gets completely depleted, an elevated anion gap is your clinical indicator of severe uremic acidosis. Basically, the whole body's chemistry just gets thrown into total chaos. Section 4, CKD, the metabolic dominoes. So, what happens when the injury isn't sudden, but is instead slow and irreversible? We shift from an acute crisis to the devastating slow-motion cascade of chronic kidney disease. The initial sequence of events here is a fascinating, if highly destructive, chain reaction. Domino number 1. As GFR slowly declines, the kidneys lose their ability to filter and excrete phosphate. Domino 2, serum phosphate levels begin to rise and accumulate in the bloodstream. Domino 3, the failing kidney tissue loses the enzyme 1-alpha hydroxylase. This means it can no longer convert vitamin D into its active form, calcitriol. And finally, domino 4, without that active vitamin D, your intestines simply cannot absorb calcium from your diet. This causes your blood calcium levels to drop, leading to hypocalcemia. And this sets up a truly vicious cycle in the body. On one hand, you've got high levels of retained phosphate just floating around in the blood. This phosphate aggressively binds to whatever calcium is left, forming calcium phosphate complexes that deposit right into blood vessels and tissues. It is literally turning soft tissues and heart valves into ectopic vascular concrete. On the other hand, this constant binding further worsens the hypocalcemia. The parathyroid glands sense this dangerously low calcium and go into full panic mode, pumping out massive amounts of parathyroid hormone, or PTH, to try and frantically fix the balance. The combination of low active vitamin D and high phosphate directly drives up the PTH, a condition we call secondary hyperparathyroidism. To get calcium back into the blood, that excessive PTH aggressively attacks the bones. It stimulates osteoclasts to tear down the bone matrix. This leads to a devastating high-turnover bone disease known as osteoitis fibrosis cystica. It causes bone cysts, marrow fibrosis, and that classic rugger jersey banding you'll see on the spine. The bones are quite literally being sacrificed just to maintain blood calcium levels. And right in the middle of all this chaos, there's an early, desperate, compensatory mechanism we absolutely have to highlight: fibroblast growth factor 23, or FGF23. Very early in kidney disease, before phosphate even shows up as high on a standard lab test, the bone cells, the osteocytes, sense the danger. They release FGF23 to force the kidneys to excrete phosphate. But FGF23 is a double-edged sword. It inadvertently suppresses active vitamin D even further, which just accelerates the bone disease. Astonishingly, FGF23 is now recognized as a powerful, independent predictor of cardiovascular mortality in chronic kidney disease patients. We've tracked the clues today from flawed creatinine tests to muddy brown casts, and we've watched the dominoes fall from phosphate retention all the way to bone destruction. It leaves us with a profound realization of just how incredibly delicate this physiological balance really is. When you consider that a drop in renal filtration can simultaneously dissolve your bones, calcify your heart, and turn your blood acidic, it leaves us with one provocative thought: are the kidneys actually the ultimate unseen master regulators of the entire human body? I'll let you ponder that.